Now then, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Stephen Howson. Time for a little bit of transfer talk, and we've got some pretty big names. United are definitely in for a striker. Erik Ten Hag basically flew the flag in the press conferences that we've had this week, and every single journalist, it feels like those at the game, the Forest game the other day, all got briefed, and they all got briefed something slightly different. My take on that is that they probably got told, oh yeah, we're definitely going to bring a striker in, and they went, okay, who? And they went, yeah, I don't know. And that's why we've ended up with so many names. Otherwise, nothing else really makes sense. So we'll get into who some of the more reliable journalists are pinning their hats to. They wouldn't have pulled a name out of their arse like some of the more shit rag ones would have done. So you got to look at the possibilities that these guys might know what's going on. So let's get into who the ones that we give a shit about are saying. David Ornstein, he's saying João Félix. And he says, the only name I'm hearing at the moment for a loan deal for United is João Félix. Atletico, however, need to lower their loan fee in order to strike a deal with MUFC. Straight in, that's the one that I reckon has probably got the most legs. Am I happiest about it? Not really, because I don't think he's necessarily what I think suits the way Ten Hag wants to play. Now, that might be why he's coming in on loan, and Ten Hag's like, it's better than nothing. Let's see how it works. But I don't think he would suit the way we play in the slightest, in all honesty. The next one is Memphis Depay, and Simon Stone saying that one. Again, it's one that you go, yeah, I could see that making sense. Again, it's not who I want, but again, another player that's on loan, so you kind of like, you can't hate it too much, but I don't really like it, and I'm just being honest with you. And he's been saying Memphis Depay has been mentioned a few times as a kind of striker Man United might try and sign in the next month. Doesn't mean they will, but when you add the availability to Ten Hag, it has to match the sporting criteria, but also the financial criteria. It doesn't leave many options. And that's the point, is like, what's available in January isn't a who's who of strikers, and it isn't a who's who of the exact sort of position that United are looking for. Rob Dawson is saying Alvaro Morata, and he's saying sources have told ESPN that João Félix is available to leave Atletico, but the Spanish club would want a significant loan fee plus an agreement to cover his wages, which could take the package close to 22 million euros for 6 months. United have ruled out renewing their interest in Arnautovic, thankfully, after looking at the West Ham striker in the summer, but Alvaro Morata remains an option if Atletico are willing to listen to loan offers. So there's an interesting one. And then there's some other stories as well. Reporters in Italy reckon that Memphis Depay has been linked to Roma with a reunion for Jose Mourinho. I just don't see that in the slightest. Jose Mourinho giving 4 minutes at United and then shit-canned him. I think the closeness of Memphis Depay to Lou van Gaal would negate any chance of him going to Roma, so I don't see that one in the slightest. Apparently United are shelving plans to sign 19-year-old right-back Malo Gusto until the summer due to Lyon's £35 million asking price, but Newcastle are chasing him as well. I hope that's just scare tactics from Mail Sport. And apparently MUFC are not going to invest £120 million on a midfielder in January, according to Romano. No shocks there. The Glazers do not want to spend crazy money while United are up for sale. Weird how United don't want to do that, but yet Liverpool do. Same circumstances. George Mendes has proposed a loan deal for João Félix to United, according to Atleti Universe, who are best placed, and to Arsenal. However, the proposal is facing resistance, potentially because it's worth up to 22 million for 6 months, which is nuts. Let's see what you guys are saying in the old comments. We have got, one sec, there we go. Abhinav there with a super chat says, "Here my conspiracy theory. Ronaldo owes United 16 million. Felix is also a Mendes client and is 16 million. Interesting. Where's Arsenal come into this though? Ben Jones says Marshall sell. That's X13 players that we still need to get rid of. So are still in a building phase under a contract, new management. They also need 7 players to correct this shite. There's a lot that needs to go. Mason says Felix 7 would be the last squeeze of the cow. David says we don't need another wide striker. That's my thoughts on it. And that was the basis of the worry with Gakpo, really, that he isn't the out-and-out striker that we need. He's someone that you're going to try and convert, and that might work, but it might not work. How much do I reckon for Mitrovic, says Peter? I don't think we're going to go for Mitrovic now. I was hearing some stuff, and I guess it's developed in the 2 or 3 week it was since I've heard that, and I don't think we're going to be doing that one. ASEC says there's no money for signings in January yet. Where's the Ronaldo money? Glazeronomics, man. Well, yeah, you've just had Ronaldo's wage come off. The transfer fees are negligible, and they're not paid immediately anyway. The Glazers aren't going to buy anyone while the club's up for sale is just fucking nonsense. Are you not going to pay your electricity bills while the club's up for sale as well? Like, the cost of doing business is the cost of doing business. You could understand they're not going to commission the building of a new stand at the stadium. That makes sense. But buying and selling players, there's only a couple of opportunities to do that per season, and they have catastrophic impact on what goes on the football pitch. So not doing it makes no fucking sense whatsoever. I know it's the Glazers we're talking about, but do you know what I mean? Daniel Kirk says Ornstein talking about the takeover and it being seismic in MUFC, get the cretins gone. Yep. Alex Bailey says would love Vlahovic. I think a lot of people would as well. Ishmael says I'd take João Félix on loan and go out for Vlahovic in the summer. Osimhen and Ramos could also do bits. There's a few that could do bits if you can wait till the summer, but I think you need somebody in that's going to do something in now. Brian Casey says Morata on loan could be a good option. Wine be a bit overawed by the size of the transfer fee. Don't know what I mean. Won't. Out-and-out striker who would be out to impress. Andrew says, I think Morata would fit well, but I don't think he's an absolute killer, and as I'm missing him, but for 6 months. That's it. For 6 months, Morata I don't think is the craziest option, in all honesty. Sam says, do I think us only going for a loan option means the Glazers are close to selling? No, I think it just means that you haven't correctly identified what you can get in, and maybe the one that you do want to get in is someone nailed for the summer. Clubs just point blank refuse to deal with you when it comes to the January transfer window. People would literally just say, no, I'm not selling. And then you got to deal with that. So I don't think it's the most drastic thing ever that you're getting somebody in on loan. You know, Ronaldo's had to been sacked. That wasn't necessarily planned. So, you know, there might be a plan in place for someone to be coming in summer and not coming in mid-season in January. You know, it's hard for a player to uproot their entire life in that sort of time, especially if they've just been away at the World Cup. Can you imagine trying to convince a wife, a young family, you've been away for 5 or 6 weeks with the national team at the World Cup, you come back, you're like, hey, how's the spaghetti? Fuck the spaghetti, we're moving to Manchester. And she's like, I don't even have a coat, what are you on about? Like, can you imagine the fucking upheaval in people's personal lives if they've had to just do what they've got to do? And I know they're extremely well compensated for doing that sort of stuff, but the upheaval in people's lives, especially if you've got kids, is huge. You can plan that a little bit more if it's around the summer. I think that's what makes it a little bit more likely. Sean says, would rather take Timu Pukki for Norwich than 6 months of Morata. Interesting. Yash says Depay should be free because of contract. Knight says if the Glazers don't sell and we're gimped for cash in the summer, it could be awful. It could all unravel. It very much could. Sufami says Newcastle should go for Depay. Newcastle are far too well run, I think, to go for Depay. RJ says Morata had a good World Cup. To be fair, don't buy people just on the basis of a good World Cup. You got to look at what they did prior to that, because the World Cup it's 4, 5, 6, 7 games in the space of 4 weeks, where half of the people that you're playing against are League 1, League 2 level. It's only when you get to the knockouts that you actually start facing teams that are comparable to Champions League and Premier League level. Stephen says, just get someone who can put the ball away. The amount of chances we create, Owen, he would get 20.
William says we're not likely to get the ideal number 9. I see a false 9, Depay or Felix likely. We are sold by the summer transfer window. Then we'll get one of the best out there, Osimhen or Vlahovic. I think that's probably the case, in all honesty. I agree with William there. I think it's probably the case of you're not going to get somebody in Major League now. I think you're probably going to get someone in that's definitely more of a stopgap. You get them in. You try and get into the top 4 with the squad that you've got. We get bought out. We go absolutely bananas in the summer next year with our correctly identified long-term targets. You bring them in, and then we win the fucking lot for the next 10 years. Does that sound like a plan? Sounds like a plan to me. Chris says it feels like Depay is a United move. DZYR says Felix and Thuram would be elite. Not sure about that. The complete art form says, what a fall from grace from United. Once the Glazers go, we have to get rid of all the people they employed. Alex says, a snippet of me and Janine convo when how was the spaghetti? No, not at all. Anthony says, what's the latest with Tony? The latest with Tony is he's under investigation by the FA. Once that happens, I guess things might progress, but I wouldn't be surprised. Clubs like United are definitely put off by any sort of off-the-field shenanigans like that. And obviously we've got our own dramas off the field with what's going on with Mason Greenwood to come to a conclusion anyway, even though he's not even going to be on trial for another 11 months. I'd be very surprised if Mason Greenwood's ever allowed to play for Manchester United again. Alan says, get Icardi. It's not the worst shout. Asek says, Fulkrug is not a bad shout in terms of a target man. Eamon says, what would my plan be? In terms of what? In terms of what to do now? Yeah, I think if they know who they want to be their main striker, let's just say, for argument's sake, it's Vlahovic or it's Goncalo Ramos, right? Let's just say it's those two, just to stop going around in circles. You make the inquiry. Benfica, Juventus go. You're not fucking having him in January. Come back to us in the summer and we'll talk. You're all right, okay. Well, we can't not have someone for 6 months, and that's where a loan makes sense, and that's where a 6-month loan makes loads of sense. And if you can get it cheap enough, I guess you bring who you can bring in. You've seen loans be fairly successful for us in the past. It's one of them. Darren O'Reilly says, Dybala, Juventus are in trouble. I don't want to see Dybala. I don't think Dybala works, to be honest. I think he's going to just occupy the same sort of spaces that Bruno would, and I don't like that. VK says, Steve, we are running on overdrafts now, so no signings for sure. Yeah, but we've always run on overdrafts. So what's the difference? If the club's going to find a buyer that's willing to pay for the debts, why would the Glazers give a shit about adding an extra couple of million to that? Not going to give a shit about that. Yeah, and Dybala's at Roma. Ines says, not really sure I want him to play now. Who are they on about there? Bones says, apart from Morata, we've already got versions of these boys. Need a big plank of wood that's going to join in with a press and stick the ball in the onion bag. No more wingers that play up top. I agree with that. Jordan says, we can't have another summer with this recruitment team in. I beg we get sold in Q1 or Q2, then a good recruitment team for the summer. Well, the recruitment team that brought in Casemiro and Martinez and Eriksson. Bowman says, has Greenwood's contract been paused while this is going on, or is it running down as usual? I assume it runs down as usual because there's not a... it's the same if you're injured. There's a date on it. There's not a date linked to how many games that you play or how often you train or whatever. Mike says, Vlahovic not an option from Juventus after their financial troubles. I think he would be, yeah. But they might have told us to sling it and come back in the summer. Maybe. This is the thing. We don't know. We're not privy to the conversation, so we have to assume. R. Rocha says, hey there, speaking against myself, but Taremi would be a guaranteed option. As for long-term, Felix, Ramos, or even Thuram would be amazing. Keep up the work. Thank you. Dan says, would I take Ivan Toney in the summer? It's going to depend on what goes on with his investigation. Alex says, why not Tammy Abraham? Why not? Yeah, and Jonathan David. Listen,
there's a shitload out there. Like, I'm not just going to start throwing names around that there's no link to, because there's literally hundreds and hundreds of strikers, especially big target men style strikers. There's fucking loads of them. But if there's no link to them, unless we're doing a scout report and suggesting them, I'm not going to comment on every single person who plays like a number 9 in the world. It's just no point. Brian says, would Charlie McNeil be ready to step up in 6 months? He didn't look like he took the opportunity in the friendlies, although no one looked great. If he can do it in training, I'm sure he'll get the opportunity. Daniel says, incorrect, it's gross misconduct, so the contract can be voided. United don't want to release a high-value asset for nothing. I don't know who he's replying to there, but it isn't gross misconduct until he's charged. And that's probably the big legal process that United are going through at the moment. If he is found not guilty and United cancelled his contract, United are going to get sued for hundreds of millions. And if he is found guilty, I'm sure the appropriate action will be taken play. Ryan says, what do I think about trying to get Giroud on loan and then going for someone like Felix or Tony in the summer? I wouldn't go for Felix in the summer. I really don't think he fits how we play. I think the opportunity to get Felix in is now. And it might be a surprise that it works. But I don't think he, at least logically, doesn't make a lot of sense right now. B. Hugh says, no, never mind. Gavin says, we should get Mitro in the summer. He's just like Haller. Mitrovic might be more of an option in the summer. I think they pied us for getting him now. He's just signed the new contract. That could be problematic for us. But then, is there better options available in the summer? Ed says, can't sack him till he's charged because he can, I think he means sue, but yeah. Paul says Thuram would be the best option for January. The best option is the ones who's available. Dennis says, Steve, don't mention every striker we could sign. We don't need Dortmund snapping him up. Daniel says, Morata is a Ballon d'Or moaner. No thanks. What does that mean? David says, Ronaldo on loan for the rest of the season. On loan from where? I haven't got a fucking club. Mark says, a bit late to the party, just been said, but Vlahovic for me, proper striker, 22 years old, agree on Mitrovic, but they'll hold out for big money. Andrew says, not saying I want it, but he could be looking at someone like Iheanacho at this rate. Literally, and a lot of people would completely foam at the mouth if you sign somebody like that. But ultimately, it's about, can someone perform the role? Are there better players out there? Yeah. This is my whole thing on Felix. I think Felix is a brilliant footballer, wonderful player, but I don't think he's right for what we need. And actually, someone like Tammy Abraham probably would be more suited to what we need. And they're probably not even closely comparable in terms of the level they are as footballers. Stiff Tackle says Thuram, Makoku for cheap, or Depay, Felix, Moussa Dembele, or Choupo-Moting on loan. Brian says, any updates on Sancho? Could need him if we don't get anyone in January. No. Ten Hag said he's just away until he's not away. Kez says we need a target man. It's simple. Look how Ten Hag set up his last team. Target man. Definitely. Sam says Griezmann would be a better false 9. I don't think you're getting him though. IQ says I think we'll end up with Depay on 400k wages. Typical United. Cadabra says, what if Marshall gets injured? Well, right now, we'd be well in the shit if Marshall got injured, wouldn't we? That's the top and bottom of it. And I think that's why there is such a desperation for bringing in a new striker. People talking about Giroud being a good short-term option. If he wants to come, he might not want to come. Adam says Darwin Núñez having a season as good as Rashford. Just saying, one's a striker, one plays on the wing, and one's come into this touted as the next best thing, and one's come into it being told he's gash and has had to fight his way back into it. But it is what it is. One lit the World Cup up, and one was shit. Make your own mind up on that one. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up from here. Cheers for tuning in as always. Make sure to subscribe. Loads more content coming out over the weekend. I think there's still some tickets left. If you want to come and watch us in Ireland, head over to the socials of the main Stretford Paddock page. You can find a link on there if you're in the Dublin area or you're in Ireland and you don't mind a bit of travel tomorrow night. There are some still tickets left, so if you're in Ireland, we're coming down, me, Joe, Jay, McCullough, and a special guest in Brian McClare to come and do a live show for you guys tomorrow. So come and get yourselves down. I'll see you in the next one. Laters. Hey, thank you for watching the video. If you are new around these parts, then don't forget to subscribe. My channel is proudly supported by my community on Patreon. If you'd like to get a little bit of extra content, a Discord group, meetups, five-a-side games, weekly podcasts, behind the scenes, and even an occasional bit of transfer news as and when I get it, then for the price of a pint, you can show your appreciation for the content that we make and get some goodies for doing so as well. Check the link in the description or click the button right here. You'll also find all of my socials here too